Hey, Danny. Getting there. Like it. 6 months. I'd like to bring our meeting to order this February 11th, 2019. Tonight our invocation will be provided by Reverend Janet DeWater, who is the pastor of First Presbyterian Church, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Boy Scout Troop 59. If you would, please stand with me.
Let us bow our heads and let us pray. God of abundant grace and eternal love, in the midst of the tasks of today, in the midst of the busyness of our lives, in the midst of the events and many needs of the world, we pause this evening. We pause to acknowledge your presence with all of your people. We pause to remember your presence in times of joy and of concern. And we pause to quiet our hearts that we may call upon the leading of your Spirit in the business at hand. We pray that you would guide our city and its leadership with your wisdom, compassion, and justice, that our lives and work in Mount Holly may reflect your light in the world. We pray these things with hearts that are thankful for your love that surrounds, heals, calls, and empowers. Amen.
Mount Holly. Glad to be back. A lot of flu going around, so our numbers got hit pretty hard tonight. Little Johnny was on vacation. He wanted me to pass along some information for you, some advice he learned. Last Valentine's, he kind of messed up and bought his wife a vacuum cleaner. So she gave him some advice that he can keep with him. First one is, as old as the world is, ladies, remember to take mercy on us. We haven't learned to put the toilet seat behind. Guys, treat your woman like she's the queen of the castle, because if not, she's going to be the lord of your estate.
There you go.
Thank you for letting us.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all being here. Troop 59 always supports our meetings. The Ministerial Association also supports our meetings, so thank you for being here tonight. A couple of organizational announcements before we get started. If you're here for public comment, which will be in just a few moments, the sign-up sheet is when you come in the door, so we'll ask that you sign up for that now. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we don't respond to any questions, but our staff will get back to you and address the issues that you bring before us. The other thing is we live stream our meetings, so I'm going to ask that the feedback that I have is, if you're at the podium speaking, please speak directly into the mic. Speak clearly and loudly. If it's too loud, you'll get me to do this. No, but that's the feedback we're getting, is it's difficult to hear the presenters. So if you guys can do that, that would be great. We have one change to the agenda. I'm going to move update from the Mount Holly CRO from new business to number 1 under presentations. And then the presentation of the downtown park study will be second. So I'm just moving the order of the meeting. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Ms. Briere, second by Mr. McCorkle. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. Consent agenda, we have 3 items. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Moore, second by Ms. Shoemaker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. First under item under presentations is an update from the Mount Holly CRO, Reverend Robert Andrews.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, esteemed members of the City Council, Mr. City Manager, and residents of Mount Holly. Good evening. For those who may not know who I am Robert Andrews, and I have the distinct pleasure and privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the greatest nonprofit in Mount Holly, and that is the CRO of Mount Holly. For the past 65 years, we have been providing assistance to those in crisis in Mount Holly with food, clothing, help with utilities, rent, and medication. Last year alone, we served over 7,000 individuals and families in Mount Holly, provided over 300,000 pounds of food, and helped with over $100,000 in financial assistance. But we could have done that without your help. So we are so grateful to the City of Mount Holly, to each of you for helping us change lives in Mount Holly. We are now on a new path. We are trying to change things to grow and enhance our organization. As we are so grateful for old partnerships such as the City of Mount Holly and the faith community, we are now aggressively pursuing new partnerships. And we are thankful for new partners such as Gaston College, Wells Fargo Bank, BB&T Bank, as well as Sharon View. And needless to say, we're also grateful for Freightliner, which is one of also our newest partners. The old paradigm for the CRO to help those in crisis was simply to give things to them, give them food, give them clothing, meet their needs by handing things out. That was the old paradigm shift 65 years ago. And it may have been the solution 65 years ago, but it's not the solution today. As our area is growing, as this entire Charlotte area is growing, Mount Holly and Belmont, the CO is also growing. We're also trying to change things, and our new mandate is calling for us to do a totally new paradigm shift. And that is, we cannot simply solve the problem of poverty in Mount Holly by giving things out to those we serve. The new paradigm shift is calling for us now to build partnerships to transform lives by programs. As many of you may already know, we closed down our clothing closet back in August, and we made room for our new Pathways to Success Life Transformation Center. We are partnering again with Wells Fargo, other banks, and Gaston College to provide classes that will help us to empower those we serve, to give them the tools to break the cycle of poverty. We're doing classes in GED. We're doing classes also in financial management, literacy. We're also offering classes in job training, soft job skill training. And we are continuing to build a program, again, to help transform the lives of those we serve. Our first classes will begin the first week in March. And we are so excited about where we are going. But our grasp, our influence has also reached beyond Mount Holly. We have built partnerships with agencies such as Novant Health in Charlotte. We have built partnerships also with neighborhoods such as outside of Mount Holly. We are continuing to grow and change what we have done. Last year, we spent most of the year rebuilding or strengthening our infrastructure, things such as creating a new website, which you have gone on, I'm quite sure. Now we have a website. We got our first online donations last year, which is a big success for the organization. We're also strengthening our PR. We're letting people know who we are. What shocked me when I first got here to the CO was that those who did not know who we were, even in Mount Holly. So we're spending time with one of the world's best board of directors, who's here also. We're grateful for our board, but we're working hard now to enhance and grow our organization. And so again, I wanted to share with you our gratitude, our appreciation for our partnerships, but also to endeavor to encourage your continued support of our organization. We've done some great work on a small, limited budget. Our budget, as you can see in your package, is less than $170,000, which is a small budget. But we've done some great things on a small budget. But we have great vision, a great plan to move ahead. We are aggressively now seeking grant funding. We're aggressively, again, seeking individuals to support and enhance what they have given to us in the past. We're trying to also go beyond what we have been doing. We have 3 overarching goals for this year and next year. One, we're looking at continuing to provide food and emergency assistance to those in crisis. 2, we're looking at not only providing help to them, as I said earlier, moving them from a point of poverty to a point of self-sufficiency. And 3, we're looking at creating capacity and leadership capital that will help us to continue our mission. There are some great needs at the CO. We need to enhance and grow our staff. We need to bring on board a volunteer coordinator, paid. We need to bring on board also a case manager, paid. So we need new things as we go along. But again, I just want to share with you where we are, where we're going, and what we should do together as a partnership in Mount Holly. So again, we are grateful for Mount Holly. We're grateful for each of you. We're so thankful. We're so thankful. But as we go forward, again, we need your support. We need your continued insight, your continued influence. As a wise leader, one of the things I've learned is that you don't have to know everything. And you don't know everything. And that's where I solicit your help, your input to help me, to help the CO become even better. So at the end of the day, those we serve will become an even stronger part of Mount Holly, and that Mount Holly will become an even better place to call home. I always say when I end my speech or end my letters at the CO, together we are making a difference together. So everyone who comes through our doors at the CO will leave empowered. The numbers of those in poverty will go down. And the other thing is, we are going beyond just becoming a crisis agency. Our goal is to become a human service organization. But we're looking at poverty on every side. In addition to doing the classes for the adults, we also be partnering with the schools in Mount Holly to offer tutoring, offer mentoring, going beyond that, getting involved with advocacy. What are the laws? What are the things in place that keep those in poverty? So again, we're growing, we're enhancing, and we're becoming even stronger, but we're doing it again together. So as I say again, we are grateful for the city of Mount Holly, for each of you. Thank you for your support and your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Andrews. We appreciate, obviously, what the Mount Holly Community Relief Organization does in Mount Holly. We appreciate your leadership and the board. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all your work. It's vital to our community. Thank you. Next item under presentations is a presentation of the Downtown Park Study. Mr. Jusko.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to introduce Kyle Baugh and Laura Hamilton from Kimley Horn. They'll be discussing the Downtown Park feasibility study with you. The feasibility study kicked off in December with a public input meeting. After that, we had a steering committee meeting in the middle of January, and then a Parks and Recreation Commission meeting at the end of January. Along with staff from Parks and Recreation, the City Manager's Office, and Planning, we have collaborated with Kimley Horn on this project. So now I'll turn it over to Kyle and Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and speak with you today. You've got a package in front of you, which is really the general guiding document that we're going to be speaking to today. So if you want to follow along, I'll be pointing some things out as part of the presentation. It should be easier to see that on the printout. So quickly, we started this project, Mark said, in December, and we had a short time frame to get this complete. And we were able to pull together, with the help of city staff, a lot of collaborative efforts, as well as input from the steering committee, stakeholders, and the Parks and Recreation Commission to pull this together into a document that's presented to you today. So I appreciate the city's staff support as well as the Parks and Recreation Department. So just to run you through quickly in the document that you have in front of you, we're going to go through quickly the project process, kind of those milestones that we met, the general site evaluations for the 3 different sites that we're evaluating as a part of this study, the existing conditions, what we heard and what we know based on input we received from the public as well as the steering committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission, a general cost and benefit qualitative analysis summary. We'll quickly run through that, and then next steps for recommendations and plan development. So again, public workshop, the drop-in session that we held with the public in December, moving into a steering committee meeting where we presented those alternatives based on public input in January. Then we met with the Parks and Recreation Commission based on some preferred alternatives after that steering committee, and then obviously the presentation to you tonight. 3 sites we evaluated as a part of this study, one being the existing Veterans Park facility, Veterans Park expansion, which expands into property north of Catawba, and then the downtown Main Street Park as well. We've identified with help of city staff an opportunity for a site along Main Street. So we'll walk you through that as well. Quickly, I want to just give you a background on the sites based on the evaluation that we saw in the field. This is the existing Veterans Park. There's some general opportunities there. Obviously, it's all city-owned property, right? We've got that in hand now. There's an existing stream on site. That's an opportunity and a constraint sometimes. But based on public input, a naturally vegetated area and something that can be used by the public for parks and recreation was seen as an amenity. Biggest couple of the takeaways for the constraints on this obviously was Catawba Avenue. We got a lot of feedback from the public saying that it's a very busy street. The existing park facility itself is not necessarily seen as a safe place. And then connectivity and accessibility currently does not exist for that site. So when we go up into the expanded area north of Catawba, it opens up a little bit more in terms of opportunities for the site. Obviously the big constraint here is going to be the fact that we don't own all of that property, so there would be some property acquisition required as a part of this. But again, based on the linear nature of this park and the fact that we've got a stream that runs through that entire corridor, it really opens up the opportunity to create this nice connection, which really ties in to what's happening on the north side of Central, and an opportunity for a gateway that ties to the Carolina Thread Trail. Additionally, you've got Municipal Lane, which provides an opportunity to make a connection, both vehicular and pedestrian, to downtown, which is really in the proximity, close proximity to where we are with Veterans Park. As we looked at the downtown site on South Main Street, the site that was evaluated was the Stowe Insurance Building site, basically because it has an envelope that seems prime for opportunity. There's a small building in the parcel. It's about a half-acre site surrounded by asphalt. Obviously, again, this is not property that we own, and we understand that. But we wanted to evaluate this site for an opportunity for an urban scale park, which one of the main takeaways for the benefits of this site would be the obvious immediate activation of South Main Street. And when you talk about a downtown park, creating that energy and that synergy within a streetscape and activating that with a park next door provides a lot of opportunities. So what we heard at the general public workshop in December, we did a couple different exercises with the public as a part of this drop-in session. One of them being, where do you live, work, and play? We wanted to get an idea of where people live, work, and are they going inside or outside of the community to find places of active recreation. In general, for live, most of the people that came obviously lived within Mount Holly limits. Work, we got a kind of mixed bag. Some worked in Charlotte, some worked elsewhere. And then play, we were seeing a lot of different things. A lot of the folks that, obviously River Street Park, but others were going outside to areas like Beaumont and some other places for active recreation. And then we asked, where should the park go? So based on those 3 sites that we provided, based on the evaluation that we're doing as a part of this study, we put those locations on a map, and we asked the participants to take a sticker and place them on the places we think they should go, or they think they should go. In general, the expanded Veterans Park opportunity seemed to be the most well received, with the downtown park being a second option. Very few folks, I think there was 4 that responded to just improve the existing Veterans Park, so it was a clear delineation of what the public wanted to see, and we certainly took that into account moving the plans forward. And then another priority exercise that we did was we took the scale of these parks and we asked the participants to make some decisions. Based on the size and the scale of these facilities, what would you like to see in the park? And we had them make some decisions. They couldn't get everything, but we were getting a lot of good feedback in terms of how they would like to prioritize those pieces and parts as a part of the park project. And then lastly, we asked the public to tell us, just write it on a board. Why do you love parks? What makes parks special? And a couple of the consistent themes are we just want to go, we want a place to walk. We want a place to walk our dogs. We want a place to walk with our kids. And then another one that was repetitive was we want to connect with nature. And obviously, given the site and the ability there with some of the existing natural features that provided for the Veterans Park, that certainly stood out to us. So we took that public input and then we provided some conceptualized schematic plans for both of these opportunities. So what you see on the next page are really a couple options that we presented to the steering committee. On the left side of the page, you'll see the opportunities for the downtown park. Now, a couple, the major pieces that we studied here, one being the existing building itself on that property. What would we do with that building? Renovate that building? Would we build a new building? What are the opportunities for the space and the scale of that park? Those are the options presented. So on the top left corner, you'll see the kiosk located there. That was an opportunity that we conceptualized to see that building renovated and turned into some sort of a retail kiosk, albeit an ice cream shop, whatever that may be, something that would gain general interest and fit in with the downtown context of retail along the street. And then the second option was really creating an opportunity where we saw maybe the kiosk going closer to the street, providing an opportunity. Another comment that we heard was folks wanted some sort of a water activation play area, so a splash pad or some element like that. So we created an opportunity in the center of that space for some large splash pad interactive water facility. And then to your right are the couple options that we provided as it related to the expanded Veterans Park options. Again, this is segregated by East Catawba. Obviously, that separates the site a bit. But this can also be phased in construction. And so what we decided was to provide an opportunity for the park to still work as property was being acquired. The main opportunity with the middle image there is the opportunity from additional parking. And obviously, with the park facility and the attraction that is, having space and opportunities for additional parking is something certainly that the steering committee as well as the Parks and Recreation thought was something that should be provided. On the far right, you'll see something where there's more of an upper meadow, taking the parking out of the equation. What would that look like? And both of these options really represent a linear park facility, highlighted by what would be an additional trail that would tie all the way from Central down to Glendale, with obviously the opportunity to tie to the Carolina Thread as well as a trailhead feature. So then what we did was we took those alternatives, refined them a bit, and met with the Parks and Recreation Committee. based on the input we received, we generally got a consensus around what would be the expanded Veterans Park option, with the addition of taking that element of having some sort of water interaction, albeit a splash pad or other, to that facility. So adding that in as a program component. But in general, that was the path forward and the input we received from the Parks and Recreation Commission. So from that, we took both of those alternatives and refined those for tonight's presentation. And what you'll see in front of you is generally the feedback we received from the public, Parks and Recreation, and Steering Committee in terms of the program elements that they would like to see, as well as some of the revisions that we made just based on site parameters and some of the changes that we made specific to expanded Veterans Park, adding in the splash pad element that the Parks and Recreation Commission wanted to see in there. I will note one other highlight, again, on the Veterans Park expanded option there. You'll see some improvements made to Municipal Lane, also ties to some of the parking that's behind the buildings on South Main Street, which ultimately provides a better connection, opportunities for pedestrian connections to Main Street, and again, some additional parking in that area with that being revised. So just quickly, we're going to zoom in real quick on both of these parks. I'll just kind of walk you through some of the elements that I just talked about. Obviously up front on the downtown park, you're going to see what we're showing as kind of that expanded streetscape enhancement. At the intersection of Main Street, there's an opportunity there to raise that crosswalk, create a flush section through there that pedestrians could come across into the park, but also provide some additional traffic calming associated with that improvement. You see that large splash pad facility. Again, these are general outlines, not super defined in detail of what that is, but showing that interactive water feature, as well as some sort of vertical architectural feature that would be above that. The street would be activated by water features, as well as potential light features that would be in the ground, and then having that retail kiosk positioned more in the back of the property to create something that draws people into the site. And again, additional seating, enhanced seating. And this takes the property, again, this was comments that we received from the steering committee, but taking that property all the way up to the South Main Kitchen and Tavern building. Obviously, that's going to require some sort of an easement or property acquisition. So I had to break this one up into two slides, but this is the Veterans Park expanded if you go to that next sheet. So right now we're at the section north of Catawba, and you'll see generally where we're showing that Municipal Lane improvement to the parking kind of creates that framework, and Highland there to the east. You can see that kind of trailhead, that visibility for that trailhead opportunity right at the intersection there. This suggests moving potentially the memorial to a location that's a little bit more visible. We think that's important. And then providing opportunities for seating, shelters, rentals, and then really activating that stream. We've got a great natural asset there in the tree canopy as well as the stream. And we actually did an on-site environmental evaluation of that stream, basically finding just a lot of invasive species. This stream itself seems healthy in that area, and we have the opportunity to just lay those banks back, stabilize that, and really create an activation between the park and the water itself. Then so if you go south of Catawba there, you'll see generally what we're showing is an amphitheater option next to the water, so that the stream would be the backdrop to that. The additional parking there you can see is accessed off of Catawba. And then we've got some existing facilities on site that we can use. There's a playground out there. There's no need to tear that down, but there's certainly opportunities to enhance that, and certainly being able to provide an accessible connection to it will be a main component there. Then obviously the splash pad closer to the Glendale side, and creating those great gateway opportunities as you walk into the park, because again, visibility came up as a comment, so we wanted to be sure that that is showcased with whether it's trailhead facilities or gateway icons. So to get into the preliminary budgeting estimates, like our screen got shrunk. The text is a little off there. Generally, just running through some planning level, cost estimating and budgeting estimates. You're seeing a cost for the downtown park somewhere between $3.5 million. Veterans Park closer to $5 million. You may have received some numbers earlier in the week, and you'll see those on the next slide, but those were more related to actual construction costs. These costs include some additional costs, i.e. design phase, services, as well as, yeah, I think that covers it. The one thing that's not included here is construction escalation factors, depending on what the future build out of this park would be. Typically, you'd want to add 4 to 5% each year for an escalation factor for construction, as well as demolition costs. Demolition costs for the property that is acquired. There's an apartment building located on the site that would need to be evaluated prior to giving general estimates of what that demolition cost would be. But this gets us in a ballpark for budgeting. So this is a general breakdown on that next page. It's kind of a summary, both quantitative and qualitative, of what we saw for both of those options. Obviously, the site area is a big difference. This downtown park's only somewhere around a half acre or so. Veterans Park, with all the expanded opportunities and the property acquired, would be closer to 8 acres. Estimated construction costs, obviously we just talked about that. So cost per acre, obviously a lot higher for the downtown park. Basically what you're doing there is you're creating a totally new environment for a park facility, whereas we're able to utilize a lot of the existing natural setting that is the park for Veterans Park, and really just creating a nice facility that includes trails and other program elements. Downtown access, this is a little gray, but basically the downtown park's right on Main Street, so it's downtown. The access to the Veterans Park is really close. It's not immediate, it's not on Main Street, but there's access opportunities there. Trail access, again, not immediate for the downtown park, but Veterans Park has a great opportunity not only to connect the new trail, but obviously to tie into the Carolina thread as well. Downtown redevelopment opportunity, a little bit less with the downtown park, and the reason we say that is because the site that the downtown park is on technically could be redeveloped itself for retail, commercial, multifamily, whatever that may be that would fit in the context of Main Street. And then in terms of meeting the community expectations, Veterans Park meets all of them. In terms of what we heard and the program elements that they wanted. The downtown park meets a lot of them, but it just doesn't have the size and the capacity. When folks talked about wanting a recreational trail to walk their dogs and walk their kids on, this doesn't have that. It's an urban park setting, so it's just a difference in terms of that design. Visibility, again, moderate, being on East Main Street for the urban park. We see Veterans Park actually has a pretty high visibility, just based on where it's at. Its opportunity to connect to some regional facilities. We see it has a great opportunity from several different locations to be seen and activated. And then based on potential job creation and ROI, this is national averages that are produced by the Public Land Trust. Trust for Public Land. They provide national averages and things that we can factor in to help determine what we're seeing with park facilities. We all know that parks create a huge benefit for communities, both financially as well as quality of life. People want parks, people need parks, it creates a healthy community. And so generally what we're seeing there, again, based on those national averages, is a 8.96 jobs created for every $1 million spent on a quality park facility. Additionally, for potential return on your investment, we're seeing a national average right now of $7 return on every dollar spent. So you're going to see, obviously, a little bit more return on the Veterans Park just based on the money you're spending. And we don't know what that absorption rate is. We didn't do a full market study to understand what that potential could be, but this is just based on national averages. We think it has the potential to really create some investment opportunities for the city. And then just a general knowledge, again, based on some of the same reports, you're going to see properties within 500 feet of a quality park improving in value by about 15% is the national average. Obviously, next to a greenway facility and a trail facility, it's even higher. And then there's general quality of life benefits. And I won't read this whole text to you. You've got it in front of you there. But based on the preferred location and the improvements that can appropriately be made to the existing resources, again, the mature tree canopy and the stream, and the attractiveness of this for folks moving to the area, our general assumption that is based on the Veterans Park expanded opportunity, that gives you the best bang for your buck. It's a bigger site, has more opportunity to program the elements that the community wants, and certainly that was the option preferred by the Parks and Recreation Commission. So implementation steps, obviously this is going to drive a lot of the schedule, and one of the biggest factors in that schedule would be the property acquisition. So if this plan moves forward, obviously that would be one of the first steps, and we're assuming an 18-month time frame. It could be shorter, it could be longer, who knows. But just to get us a general guideline of what that schedule impact could be, that's going to drive a lot of this. Parks and Recreation Master Plan update, we think it would be good to update that with the preferred alternative for the downtown park feasibility. Obviously doesn't have to, it doesn't run concurrently necessarily, but we see that as an important step, so that's noted here. Obviously the release for the RFQ for the planning and design would take some time. The planning and design itself, somewhere between 90 days, and then permitting, 90 to 120 days, just general go by there. We don't need any real huge significant permits related to the stream. We would need a nationwide permit for bank stabilization, so that would be important, but that can run concurrently with some of the other permitting that we're doing, so roughly 45 days for that. And then we're assuming 12 months of construction. And so it's an aggressive schedule for the most part. It can be done depending on the funding and the property acquisition. There's some pretty key components there that would drive a lot of this, but at 2022, 2023, if all the right things fell into place, we see it as a feasible schedule. So next steps, generally just city council recommendation for the park itself to move forward with that park and to take the next steps. Certainly would be required to make that possible, and then start organizing the funding mechanisms around it. And then, like I said, property acquisition after those funding mechanisms are in place, and then design and implementation.
That's a lot to absorb. Thank you. We appreciate your work and your presentation. Does council have questions? Ms. Briere?
Yes, when you held the public workshop, approximately how many adults from Mount Holly were involved?
I believe we had about 30 to turn out.
30 all total?
30 participants, yes.
That's what this information came from. You were talking about you were talking about the stream down at Veterans Park. Mm-hmm. Where is it located?
Right in the middle. So actually, the Veterans Park itself, the portion of it off of Glendale is capped currently and is running in a storm drain.
It's like a ditch down through there?
Well, it's actually covered, so it's actually grass right now. So actually, if you can see it right here, so this is Glendale right here. This is the existing memorials right in about this location. Mm-hmm. It's capped all the way till about here and underground, and then it daylights. So just before you move kind of to that next, right before the playground is really when it starts to open.
Mr. Moore?
Could you talk to us a little bit about the property acquisition and what properties we're looking at? Because sure, I know that we looked at multiple different things.
Yeah, so generally, here, let me go back to this. So if you can follow my, can you see my mouse? It's pretty small up there. I don't know if I move it fast. So generally,
slower, I can keep up with it.
Okay. in general, between Glendale and Catawba is the city-owned park as it is today. The large parcels to the east of that park facility are not currently owned. Those would need to be acquired. North of Catawba, there's 3 large parcels that would need to be acquired, but the city owns this whole corner. So all of these up here are city-owned properties. So we've really got a good bit of it. And it's feasible to think that this could be done in phases. Certainly, once property is acquired, we would create a design that's accommodating once those other parcels came online. But certainly, these are nice. We still would like those. But these 3 right here really separate the property. So 1 or 2 at minimum would need to be acquired to create a continuous linear park throughout.
And is there anything there now, because I can't really tell where that is? It's off Municipal Lane. If I turned on Municipal Lane to the left,
Yep.
there's nothing on those parcels, right?
Yeah, and actually there is a 4th parcel. It's not shown here, but there are apartments closer to Highland.
Okay, I understand those, but is there any, I understand where the apartments are. What I'm asking is, those other parcels don't have a structure on them currently, correct, right?
Correct.
So then you would be purchasing,
Just
the
the
proposal would be the land, but then the apartments would be a part of it
Correct.
along 273.
Yes, sir.
David, do you mind? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Follow up, yeah.
One of the things that we looked at was even coming up closer to the Presbyterian Church. There's some properties there. There's like 3 houses. There's 2 houses, an empty lot, and another house. You know, that was just something that we looked at as a possibility. That would get us even closer to downtown. So, you know, that's just something that we maybe should look at. Just, you just never know. Maybe it could work out better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, they got it. So then I have one more follow-up question. Just to clarify, there's another set of apartments that would be where the parking is going.
Correct.
Got it. All right. Just make sure I'm oriented correctly with the maps.
You got it.
Mr. Meadows?
So just a couple of comments. One, I'm extremely excited about the progress that we've made, and this becomes a centerpiece that pulls our downtown from the current thinking of it only running down Main Street, because it does not just run down Main Street. It actually starts here, and this building runs down Central and runs down the bypass and the other, and the sooner we can get people to think that way, we will actually have a bigger downtown than we currently have with the opportunities for more investments. I don't know if this is the right forum for these comments, but it kind of strikes me as odd that we would spend a bunch of money to tear down apartments to put parking there when we're trying to create green space. So to me, it seems that if you use the municipal lane section of the park and you were to create on-street parking and pull the sidewalk back, you could actually create more green space on the inside that would be usable and eliminate this huge parking. And I just used my very sophisticated scale here a moment ago and quickly figured out that I can get 30 of the 40 spaces that you have in there along the road only on the part that we have, which if we did some minor right-of-way acquisition and sold it as improvements, we could possibly get other property owners to participate. So I'd like to get that on the record, that we can address parking a little differently, that would also address our concerns about the traffic that were expressed, because if we can put on-street parking, that becomes traffic calming. You're gonna narrow the traffic lanes that you're traveling on, and then you got more green space as well. So I think we really need to add that as a footnote somewhere, that hey, when we look at the design, these are great. I love where it's going, but there needs to be some refinement, because if we were just building a parking lot, you know, it would be somewhere else rather than here, in my opinion.
That's great.
So couple clarifications. One is that municipal lane, we are projecting accommodating on-street parking on municipal. The addition of the parking where it is shown in that preferred alternative is the flattest spot. So ideally the cheapest option when it comes to parking. And for a park, we do think what this park could be would necessitate a little bit more parking than what we are showing in the municipal lane. But to your point, I think that could still be evaluated in the final design. Absolutely.
So the flattest spot is the place where one can actually play instead of putting cars. So, and a park of this nature, in my opinion, today all that parking is necessary, but what this creates as far as development opportunities, there'll be plenty of parking in those facilities and those structures, and we have other parking. I know a lot of folks don't believe this when you say it, but there's a lot of parking downtown. If it were labeled and you had a parking app that told you where to park, this is close enough to where you could actually walk. Imagine that. Walking to a park with a linear path to walk your dog and yourself on. So I would continue to challenge that this is not the place for parking. That thinking is today, and this is really designed for 15 years from now, which we're already seeing massive changes in our downtown. And once we expand the thought process of what our downtown is, you will see development opportunities, and this is where people are going to want to have the third story looking over for that canopy and the activities that will be going on there. Stop, so I'm getting a little excited.
So,
Absolutely.
Mr. Moore?
And I was just going to say, we don't want to spend $600,000 or $800,000 on a parking lot.
Yeah.
One other comment to sort of build on what Mr. Moore had brought up about the additional parcels. It also could put parking in portions of that which address downtown parking, additional parking. Church could use that parking, the Presbyterian church behind for, as they expand, but also save more space, green space. So that's a possibility I see with those three parcels adding to that.
Absolutely. And I think certainly to your point, sir, as well, final design certainly would start accommodating some of those needed changes.
Other questions? Ms. Breer, did you have a question? Okay, Mr. Toomey.
This creek that you talk about is a wet weather creek. There's no head to it. It starts up there behind the Rollins apartments, and it flows, just trickles down through there. And I was just wondering if we could run into any kind of a problem trying to alter the course of that creek. You can't just go and alter a creek when you want to. You got to go through all your environmental impact studies and all the other things that's required of it.
Absolutely.
But it being a wet weather creek, there may be some differences there in what we can and can't do as far as a flowing stream versus a wet weather stream.
Absolutely.
Did y'all think about that or look at it?
We did. It is jurisdictional, and we did evaluate the opportunity for stabilizing the banks on that stream. We wouldn't be moving or relocating that stream as much as we would just be stabilizing it. So that would just require a nationwide permit. It takes about 45 days to get, and that could run concurrently with the other permitting processes going on.
I wish it was a flowing stream. It'd be much better.
Sure.
This close to Mount Holly in the downtown, but it's not.
Correct. Correct.
Ms. Breer.
As far as the acreage that we already own there, how many more acres are we looking at purchasing versus what we already have?
So the city owns about 2 acres of that acre, so about 6 acres.
Does council have any other questions? I'm sure this won't be the last time you have questions or an opportunity to provide input. Kind of the first time we've seen the full presentation, so it would be difficult to address all of those concerns. Mr. Jackson, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just want to talk to you in terms of next steps. You saw in the presentation what the next steps could be for the particular park, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, I would speak of the upcoming City Council retreat, whereby we're going to discuss some property acquisition, possibly talk about some dollar amounts involved with that. But as far as tonight is concerned, this particular project, if you will be discussed as well at the retreat. However, some of your decision making could impact how we present it to you at the retreat as well. So you've heard and seen choices. You've heard about discussion with Parks and Rec Commission, Steering Committee, etc. And so you know what the particulars are in terms of what you could choose to do. So We don't necessarily ultimately need you to make a finalized decision tonight. However, if you can point staff in the direction of what you might want to see, that would help us with the retreat coming up in terms of what information we put into the ultimate presentation during that time.
Mr. Meadows.
I'd like to at least offer my opinion on supporting the recommendations of the work that's been done so far, which is to focus on the Veterans Park expanded option, I think is what you've termed it as. And I guess I would like to add to the acquisition. We've also sold some properties recently, so I'd like to have a little more information on what remains from those proceeds and how that might impact acquiring these properties to expand the park as well for a retreat item.
Anybody else? Mr. Moore?
I agree with the choice of Veterans Park expansion. I was on the steering committee and with the Recreation Commission, so this is what we kind of came up with. It's just, you know, there's going to be other options, and we're going to have to tweak it and figure out what we want and what we can do and what's going to work out best for the city. But I think this could be just a wow factor at some point once we, you know, decide on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's something that we've talked about for years. That portion of property that we own down there, and it's we're getting closer, and I'm really excited about it.
Ms. Bear?
I'd like to have time to walk the Veterans Park. I've been in the park, but not on the outlying areas, and just see what has been brought to us. Like you said, we just saw it, and see some prices about what this extra acreage would cost. I mean, we haven't talked about, you know, what the cost is going to be for us to buy this acreage versus the downtown.
Well, I know they have an estimate in our presentation we just saw about buying the acreage. So
Is that, I mean, so that is...
It was the first item.
It was, and I know, I saw it, but for the downtown, I was like, really?
Well, the cost for the downtown park, is that what you mean? That's pretty expensive. I mean, to me, compared to the Veterans Park expansion, I mean, bang for your buck, Veterans Park expansion, by far, is the better investment, it looks like to me. That's what I hear you saying. I mean, everybody else feel the same way as far as seeing the additional information? Obviously, the park is there to walk anytime. We want to do that if you want to do that. I'd say the north side's a little more difficult than where it is now. Kudzu's dead, so you might be able to get through there. We don't have any goats in there right now, so maybe it'll be good. Do you have what you need, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate the report. Looked great. Next is public comment. Do we have anybody signed up? We do. Okay. If we take a break, I'm scared I'm going to look at the ball game score, and I just can't do that. I'm DVRing it right now. All right, for public comment, help me out with the last name. Kyle? Is it Kyle? So you did a great job. So you're okay getting off of this? Okay. You had a little more than 3 minutes, so you didn't. But you covered your bases, so we appreciate that. Under old business, consideration and approval of an amendment to the city code as it relates to parking in the right-of-way. Ms. Anders, see if we bought off all this property.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is old business from your last meeting, the January 28th meeting. You discussed the parking issues on East Catawba Avenue as they approach the intersection with Highland Avenue, and looked at a few options that staff had pulled together. And part of that, we received direction to look at the DOT standards for parking within so many feet from an intersection with a DOT road. And so in looking at that, and reminding everyone that Highland Avenue is a DOT road and that East Catawba Avenue is a city street, We found that the site triangle that DOT requires is 70 feet back from the intersection and 10 feet over. They don't want anything in that site triangle, so that speaks to that question. The proposal before you is just an additional option to look at, where Chapter 13 of the City Code could be revised to require no parking within the public right-of-way within 100 feet of an intersection of any road with any NCDOT maintained road. The site triangle that I mentioned was 70 feet, but based upon the discussion from the last meeting, where we were looking at a 100-foot distance, that's where the staff came back with the proposal of no parking within 100 feet from an intersection with a DOT road. So I'll turn this back over to you for questions.
Does council have any questions? Direction, comments, thoughts? Mr. Meadows?
I want to say thanks to staff for going back and doing that research, and I would encourage us to pursue a consistency along those state roads where we're intersecting with them, so you have a singular set of standards that you're following, rather than, well, what does the city say and what does the state say and which is the most restrictive. If they are similar or very close together, then there's less that has to be kind of from a plan review standpoint when staff is looking at this going forward. I would like to see us pursue the proposal that we have in the package. How does others feel about that?
Council have any other comments? Different opinion? Mr. Toomey?
I made a comment at the last meeting about the space that's between intersections. It should be all inclusive of a street. We don't want people parking on our sidewalks adjacent to the street, or place of travel. So we're talking about intersections, but we need to make sure that we cover all of our streets. Not only the intersections, but
I will point out that it's already prohibited to park on a sidewalk. And at the last meeting, staff did write, and I presented an option to also include in here no parking between the sidewalk and the edge of the road, not the road right away, I mean the road surface, which staff titled the planting strip between the sidewalk and the road surface, and that option was presented at the last meeting. And this is just an additional option in front of you today, so you can pick either, both, neither. It's up to you.
Ms. Briere?
Do we have anything in place to enforce this ordinance?
So in terms of enforcing it, okay, so it would be like enforcing any of the rest of the parking ordinance. We could hand out parking tickets, for one thing. Repeat violators that are including people parking next to their houses, that we've sent letters and we followed up, with education. That's the method for that.
I just feel like the police, if they have to enforce it, we need to have something in place that they can enforce.
Does that satisfy that we do?
Right.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Meadows?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt, is it a resolution or an ordinance? I'm not sure which it is in the...
I would say it's a
This would be a resolution.
Right, yeah.
We need a number.
Help me with the number.
Okay, 0211-2019A.
What the mayor said moved.
So this would include 10 by 70 foot site.
10 by 100.
I mean 10 by 100. Thank you. I was reading off this right here. 10 by 100, but also include no parking on the planting strips as we had discussed previously.
That's not.
Is that not part of your motion? I'm clarifying it.
If you remember the discussion we had the last time, what we were concerned about was unintended consequences.
Right.
And if you blanket the entire city, then I think you're going to create some challenges where where the parking is perfectly fine. I think we were concerned about safety. Was the driving concern here in the intersection of the state road and strike triangles. So
I just wanted to be sure that I understood that wasn't going to be in there. So if it's
we already
not,
have an
that's
ordinance that
fine.
says you're not allowed to park on the sidewalks.
Okay,
So
good enough. So everybody understands what we're voting on? Okay, we have a motion. I need a second. Second by Mr. McCorkle. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for all your diligence and hard work on this never-ending issue. Thank you. We appreciate it. A lot of parking there tonight, by the way. Next is consideration and approval of a brokerage firm to market the streets and solid waste property. Mr. Braswell.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. What you have before you tonight is the former streets and solid waste property on Elm Street and consideration of a brokerage firm to list and market this property. In your council packet, I've outlined the items that have taken place to date. One being that we've done the RFP process last fiscal year, and then we've also rezoned the property to conditional district commercial multifamily. And since the property will now accommodate uses that are comfortable with what's going to take place out there, staff is recommending to move forward with using our current commercial real estate firm, Caldwell Banker Commercial Mecca, to list the property and to market it. And if council so chooses this option, we'll have Caldwell Banker work with our city attorney to come up with some kind of agreement. And Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you this time for any discussion or questions.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions? Anybody have a, are you in favor of this? Do you want to make a motion to this effect or not? Mr. Meadows?
So I'm all for marketing this property, but my question, I guess, or concern going forward with it is, while we put zoning in place, the whole intent of this was to get a specific type of development along the way. So we need to have a very clear conversation with the broker about the tools we have available to us, because what I don't want to have happen is this just be a straight market sale. I mean, you can sell it tomorrow and I can go and put a storage facility for my metalworking company or whatever, you know, or not use it in the ways that we want it to be done. I know we've done some zoning on that, but you can always go through a rezoning. I'm trying to think of how to use some of the tools we have available to us. Lease option, some of the deed restrictions we've talked about. There needs to be a clear conversation. I know I'm not doing a very good job of articulating this, but there needs to be a clear conversation about this isn't just market and sell, grab your commission and go. This is going to require a little more than that this time. We want specific uses on this property. We've talked about this at 2 different retreats now. We've spent a lot of time and effort on this, and I don't want it just to be put up for sale. I want it to have a direction. I think that it's been said many times, if we have skin in the game, which we've got some tools available to us, someone has to articulate that to somebody to say, yes, you're taking a risk on a property, but we can mitigate some of that risk financially by having a lease option, or kind of negotiating, if you do this much improvement, we'll put this in the lease place like we did to the patio downtown. If that's not explained, nobody's going to know it's there other than us, and we're going to continue to be frustrated by the opportunities not coming forward, because it is a risky site to some degree, its location and current condition. So encouraging somebody is going to require a little more salesmanship on the tools that we have available, and a little bit of us putting some tools in place to claw it back if it's not going where we want it to be going. I don't know if I did a very good job of articulating that. But
I think that's what I was trying to say as far as like the agreement that we plan to put in place, is to make sure that all that is structured in there. Somehow it's kind of hard to state all that right now without having the firm that's in place. But once we get them on board and have these conditional district, the rezoning, the zoning capabilities out there, to actually move it forward with their expertise, to market to that particular party that we want to go towards and get from here.
Mr. Meadows.
Probably regrets having said this out loud, but may I participate in the crafting of those documents when we get to that point? Because I just am not certain that I'm hearing back from staff the articulation of the tools I'd like to see included. I may be overstepping my bounds. Mayor, you'll have to tell me if I need to pull back or not.
Here's what I would suggest. Mr. Meadows has extensive knowledge and experience in this area. Maybe if you need consultation in that, certainly the whole council will benefit of that and see that before it is signed, I would imagine. So certainly where council has strengths and background, I think it should be used, certainly to help and facilitate. I don't think we need a committee formed, committee of one maybe on this one, but I think it'd be great. And certainly council will get benefit of that before anything's signed. Is that correct?
And maybe we could get some of that information at our retreat. I don't know if that timing.
If we have enough time, yeah.
We just got 5 minutes, you know.
Sure, absolutely. We can certainly add that. Yeah, no doubt. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for offering that. So are we good as a council to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we proceed with developing the agreement for the services of Caldwell Banker Mecca to market this property.
Okay. Second by Mr. Meadows. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes. Make sure here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Toomey, second by Ms. Briere. All those in favor,